Hello guys, welcome to the fiction series. Today we are gonna see, what if Naruto was the son of Thor and got harem? Part 1. Huge shout out to WINDSTORM16 for this story. If you want more awesome fan fiction like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, so without wasting any time, let's get into the video. I swear, this is the last time I'm letting you drag me to these stupid dances, said a 14-year-old boy with an annoyed expression on his face. The boy had spiky fire red hair, pale skin, 3 unique whisker marks on his cheeks, and electric blue eyes. Along with being surprisingly muscular for his age, while also having several blue runic tattoos along his arms. With his attire consisting of dark reddish-brown steel-toed boots, baggy black pants tucked into them, a sleeveless off-white tunic, opera-length fingerless black gloves with red-brown studded leather straps around them, and a blue-gray leather vest. With him currently pulling ribbons out of his hair and wiping lipsticks off his face, before giving his friend an annoyed expression when she kept giggling. "It's not funny, Bianca. This is already the 3rd time, tonight," the boy said while muttering the latter part, not believing he's been swarmed by 3 groups of girls already, no matter what he does. "It's kind of funny, Naruto," said Bianca, smiling in amusement at the whiskered redeed. Bianca was a 14-year-old girl with long, silky dark brown hair that went down to the middle of her back, an olive skin tone showing her Italian heritage, and dark brown, nearly black, eyes. With her wearing knee-high boots with laces going all the way up them, dark blue jeans, a long-sleeved dark purple shirt, and a black tank top with a red skull over it. "If you think it's so funny, why don't you go join the rest of the lunatics in surrounding some other poor guy?" retorted Naruto as he ran a hand through his hair, making sure he got all the ribbons out, along with checking if he got all the lipstick off as well. "No thanks, it's much more fun watching," Bianca said, only for them to look at a 3rd person snickering from their seat on the bleachers. The person being another boy and was 12 years old with messy and shaggy jet black hair, an olive skin tone, and the same dark brown, nearly black, eyes as Bianca. Wearing black shoes, black jeans, a gray shirt, and a brown aviator's jacket. With him also shuffling several trading cards and a few figurines placed around him. "Yeah, you only watch, because you just want to kiss Na," said the boy, before Bianca quickly covered his mouth and glared at him with a light blush on her cheeks. "Shut it, Naiko," Bianca hissed, giving her brother a warning look, only for her blush to intensify when Naruto wrapped an arm around her shoulder and pulled her close. "Oh, no need to be shy, Bianca. I already know you're much prettier than any other girl here, so no worries about losing my attention," said Naruto, smirking at her red face before she quickly pushed him. I'm not jealous. You can kiss any girl you want. I wouldn't care," said Bianca, crossing her arms while looking away. "Does that include you?" Naruto asked with his smirk growing, while Naiko laughed at his sister's expression. "Naruto. Stop teasing me," Bianca said, only for the redeed to wrap an arm around her again. "Who's teasing?" Naruto stated, now smiling at her, making the brunette smile slightly in return. "Ugh, if you're both going to do that all night, I'm making a run for it," Naiko said while gagging at how close they were, causing Bianca's eyes to widen before she stepped away from Naruto again. "Naiko?" said Bianca, glaring at her brother, before instantly glaring at Naruto when he started snickering. "It's not funny," Bianca said, not liking it when they both teased her like. "It's kind of funny, Bianca," Naruto said, making the girl pout at having her words thrown back at her. Before Naruto smiled at the siblings, glad for the chance to have met them after coming to Westover when he was finally able to escape that place. It's actually been 2 years since then, hasn't it?" Naruto thought in surprise, realizing it's been 2 years since he'd gotten away and managed to hide himself from those people. Having never really had any hope that he'd ever be able to escape them, but always looking for an opportunity on where he'd be able to get away. And the opportunity had finally come 2 years ago when something big had happened, something that took their attention off of him long enough to get away. With Naruto refusing to stop running, knowing if he was brought back, things would only get worse. "I'm still not sure if I was lucky or not with how she was able to find me, even if she did give some protection," Naruto thought, placing a hand on the side of his neck where a rune was placed to keep him hidden from anyone searching for him. He hadn't stopped running until he arrived in America, which would be the last place they'd look for him, especially this close to New York. But that never got rid of his nervousness that eventually they'll catch up and try to drag him back. Or if that woman ever showed up and wanted payment for offering her assistance. With Naruto being unsure which would be worse. It had only been after that he met Bianca and Naiko that he started relaxing, being able to open up for once. Learning how they'd been enrolled into Westover Hall after being picked up by a lawyer in the hotel casino they'd been staying in for a few months. With their enrollment being paid for by a trust fund their parents left them. At least that's what they believed, but Naruto knew the truth or what he was able to figure out on his own. knowing that whoever the lawyer was likely wasn't human. And while the trust fund was one of their parents paying for their enrollment, it was most likely from whichever one of their parents that weren't human. And with the aura of darkness and death around them, Naruto could guess just who their father was. And I can only guess the hotel is owned by the Lotus Eaters, meaning a few months was more likely a few decades. Naruto thought when he first realized who Bianca and Nico were. But despite the danger that had come from just associating with them, he didn't try leaving, having come to enjoy being around them. Along with the fact they were the first actual friends he's made in his entire life. Enjoying how inquisitive Nico can be about everything, always asking questions and learning new things. As well as his obsession with pirates and his mythomagic game, something that Naruto still had no idea how it worked. Deciphering and understanding runes was easier than trying to figure that game out. Thought Naruto, still feeling the headache he'd gotten when Nico tried explaining the rules to him. Plus, the whiskered Redeed would admit, his pride did take a major blow when he had never once been able to beat Nico at the game, which the younger boy never failed to let him forget. Which did end with Naruto hanging him up by his feet in the gym, in nothing but his underwear, something that did get Nico to stop. Though the two still got along, with Naruto even helping Nico find the rare Hades figurine he'd been looking for to complete his collection. While Bianca, Naruto couldn't deny that he really enjoyed being around her, along with helping her start coming out of her shell and become more open and confident in herself. As well as being able to relax more with someone else helping look after her brother. Leading to Bianca being able to enjoy more time to herself rather than always looking after Nico. So, despite Naruto's desire to not get dragged into anything related to gods, let alone the problems of the Greek gods, he wasn't going to abandon Bianca or Nico. And with Thorne and Underwood here, I get the feeling more problems will be arriving sooner rather than later. Naruto thought in annoyance, being able to sense Thorne was a monster in disguise, and Grover Underwood, a new transfer student, who he guessed is a satyr. Though, Naruto was pulled from his thoughts when he felt three new people enter the school alongside Underwood, making him look towards the doors with a frown. Naruto? Is something wrong? Bianca asked when she noticed his expression, with Nico look at him as well, both of them being confused at what he seemed to be looking at. Nothing, just a weird feeling I got is all. Replied Naruto, with Bianca slowly nodding while glancing at where he was looking, not seeing anything out of the ordinary. Before looking around the gym to see if something was wrong, having always had a strange sense to feel if something wasn't right. I'm gonna go get a drink. Either of you want one? Naruto asked, looking at the siblings, with Nico shaking his head as he went back to shuffling his cards. No thanks, I'm good. Said Bianca, shaking her head, with a whiskered Redeed nodding before he began walking over to the snack table. All while never taking his eyes off the door, sensing Underwood and the three unknown signatures getting closer, having felt them encounter Thorne before continuing on their way. With it not being long before he saw them enter the gym, seeing Underwood with three girls. Reaching at the table, Naruto got a glass of punch while getting a feel for the girls' signatures. Let's see, one of them feels wild and free, like nothing would be able to hold it back if unleashed. I'd say that one is connected to the ocean. The second, that one's a little difficult, but it seems calm and focused, as if they're thinking over every possible scenario that could happen the moment they entered the gym, so most likely a child of a war deity or one connected to knowledge and wisdom. And the third, Naruto thought, pausing slightly as he felt the third girl's signature, scowling at the familiar feeling of it. The feeling of being in the middle of a storm, the feeling of every cell in your body lighting up with energy and power, the feeling of being in the presence of something truly unstoppable and without mercy. But not just the feeling, it was the scent of ozone that even from here he could smell clinging to the girl, the same scent he knew clung to him as well. Lightning. Thought Naruto, hating the feeling and the memories it brought up before taking a deep breath, knowing he couldn't lose control of himself. Turning to face the now identified demigods and Satyr, Naruto saw the girls that felt like lightning drag Underwood onto the dance floor and tried blending in with the students. While the girl that felt like the sea and the calm girl remained off to the side, talking with each other. Crossing his arms, Naruto looked at the two girls until the calm one soon caught him staring, making the sea girl look at him with narrowed eyes. Before he gave them a mocking wave, causing their eyes to widen, even more so when he walked over to them, which also gave him a better look at them. Both of them looked to be 14 years old, with the first girl having long curly honey blonde hair that went down past her shoulders, tanned skin, a slender and athletic body, and captivating storm gray eyes that shined with curiosity and intelligence. Her attire consisted of black boots, navy blue jeans, a dark red shirt and a gray jacket over it. She also had a necklace, with several clay beads and a college ring on it. And the second girl having long black hair at the top that changed to violet tips at the bottom, large ocean green eyes akin to emeralds that shined through her pale skin, wearing a dark blue long-sleeve jacket over a gray hoodie, a violet t-shirt underneath, a blue skirt that hid her black sports shorts, and lastly violet socks, worn under a pair blue and white running shoes. Hello there. Naruto said in a similar manner to a certain GD master while smiling at the two girls, who quickly shook off their shock at him coming over to them. "Hello," said the blonde girl, looking at him with a calculating look in her eyes. "Hi," the black-haired girl said warily. "This may seem forward, but would either of you lovely ladies care for a dance?" Naruto asked with a short bow as he held his hand out, surprising the girls again before they traded a look, with the blonde girl soon taking his hand. "Sure, as long as you don't mind dancing with Andy afterwards," the girl replied, causing the now named Andy to glare at her, with Naruto merely smirking. "I'd be more than happy to dance with two beauties such as yourselves," Naruto said with a wink, with the two blushing lightly at the compliments before the black-haired girl immediately scoffed. "Yeah, not in a million years, Annabeth. Though you're more than welcome to spend the night with the Casanova," Andromeda said with a scowl before stalking off into the crowd. But the duo staring at her, with the now named Annabeth looking a bit guilty, knowing that she had been pushing a button there. Before Naruto guided the blonde girl onto the dance floor, placing one hand on her hip and taking her hand with his other, while her free hand went to his shoulder. "Naruto Uzumaki," Naruto introduced as the two began dancing. "Annabeth Chase, and sorry about Andromeda, she's a good person. But she was betrayed by a guy we both had a crush on a couple years back, with the wound still being rather fresh," replied Annabeth, still having a calculating look in her eyes, as if she was trying to solve a new puzzle. "Well, Annabeth Chase, would you mind telling me what three demigods are doing here? Especially two of the big three's demigods," said Naruto, making Annabeth freeze in shock before quickly shaking her head. "You know," Annabeth stated, not expecting him to be aware of the gods, given how Grover had just told them that neither Naruto nor the D'Angelos were aware of their heritage. But now the Uzumaki's admitting he knows, even more so, he can somehow tell Andromeda and Thalia were children of the big three. "I'm aware, it's also not that hard when none of you are suppressing your energy. I'm sure Thorne already knows about you as well," Naruto replied, surprising her again at his knowledge. "How do you know Thorne's a monster? Why haven't you dealt with him yet, if you already know? Were you trained before? Have you been to camp?" questioned Annabeth, unable to help herself in getting answers about how he knows so much already. In order, it's not that hard to sense monsters when you know what they feel like, not help that he makes no effort to hide his distaste for demigods. "I haven't dealt with him because he hasn't done anything yet, and I'd prefer not revealing myself unless absolutely necessary. I have been trained before. And no, I've not been to any camp," said Naruto, with Annabeth nodding slowly. "That makes sense, I guess, as there'd be no telling if he's working for someone if he's gone this long without making a move. It'd be good to see if he'd have any useful information or lead us to whoever he's working with," Annabeth said, making Naruto smile at her. "Beautiful and smart, I'm guessing that means you're a daughter of Athena," Naruto stated, making the blonde girl blushing at the compliment. Well, she, Andromeda, and Thalia were some of the most beautiful women in Camp Half-Blood that weren't children or descendants of Aphrodite. They had little to no experience with dating or being in a relationship, given Thalia's and Andromeda's status as the children of Zeus and Poseidon, respectively, made them practically unapproachable. While she was the considered one of the most intelligent of her mother's children and the counselor of Cabin 6, putting her in a similar situation to Thalia and Andromeda, giving them rather low tolerance to flirting and teasing. The closest that any of them had to an actual relationship was Thalia's brief relationship with Luke. As well as her and Andromeda once having a one-sided crush on Luke prior to his betrayal. Only for Thalia and Luke's relationship to be very short-lived, with Thalia being turned into a tree. Nor were they in a situation to really go anywhere with it, given how they were on the run from monsters and various gods. While whatever feelings that Andromeda had developed for Luke from him being her mentor and first true friend in Camp Half-Blood immediately turned to hate after he nearly killed her after the quest to reclaim the Master Bolt. But the pain and trauma from being betrayed by someone she was romantically interested in such a way caused Andromeda to develop a disdain for being in a relationship and a slight case of androphobia. The only exceptions being Chiron, Grover, her father, and her half-brother, Tyson, once she warmed up to the latter. That was actually the reason why Annabeth tried to push for Naruto to dance with her, as well. Having hoped to use this dance as a form of shock therapy, will convince Andromeda to find a guy to dance with before they notice Naruto staring at them. "Yeah, I am. And do you know who your parent is?" Annabeth asked, interested in learning who his godly parent is, unable to place who it could be. She'd almost say it was Zeus, given how similar his eyes were to Thalia's own, but couldn't be sure. "Yes, I know the bastard," said Naruto with his smile dropping, making Annabeth frown at this, seeing he apparently didn't get along with his father, if she guessed right. "Who is it?" questioned Annabeth, knowing it helped narrow down the list, but still couldn't see any defining features, not to mention being confused at the tattoos he had. "You really don't want to know?" Naruto replied, with the daughter of Athena's frown deepening, but relented, aware that a lot of demigods didn't get along with their godly parents, only for her to suddenly freeze as her eyes widened. "They're gone," Annabeth said, looking to where Bianca and Nico were, only to see they were gone. With Naruto quickly letting her go and whirling around, but saw that both of them were gone, making him mentally curse at not paying more attention. "You get your friends, I'll find them," said Naruto as he took off running before Annabeth could say anything, leaving her to simply nod as she looked for where her friends were, but saw Andromeda was gone as well. "By the god seaweed brain, why do you always do that?" Annabeth thought, groaning that Andromeda's likely run off to save Bianca and Nico herself. Shaking her head, Annabeth quickly looked around for Thalia and Grover before running through the crowd to see where they danced off to. But Naruto had run out of the gym and began searching for any sign of the D'Angelos or Thorne, only to not find any trace of them in the school, before finding his way to the entry hall. Scowling in anger when he saw a few black spikes that were about a foot long. The Uzumaki grabbed one, catching the faint scent of poison coming off of it, along with one that had a few drops of blood. "If he hurt them, I'm going to tear his funking head off," Naruto mentally swore before going outside, finding several tracks in the snow leading into the woods. Following the path, which was lit by old-fashioned lamplights, Naruto held up his hand and soon heard the sound of an object flying through the air. Not reacting as a war axe flew into his waiting hand, with the blade being a dark gray color with a golden inlaid silver edge with runes along it, a wooden shaft with golden designs reinforcing it, and a matching golden pommel. With his weapon in hand, Naruto ran down the path while sensing Bianca, Nico, and Thorne up ahead along with the girl who felt like the sea. Only to run faster when he also sensed the other two girls and Underwood moving towards them as well. Not doubting that Thorne will likely have called or summoned allies if he'd taken Bianca and Nico. Before he soon entered into a clearing, only for his eyes to widen at seeing Thorne, now in his true form of a manticore, standing near a cliff with Bianca, Nico, the other demigods, and the satyr. While hovering behind them was a fully armed, sleek black military-style airship with what he guessed were rocket launchers. "Funking perfect," thought Naruto, not believing that two children of the big three couldn't handle a single manticore. Spotting a discarded spear and shield, likely one of the demigods lost their weapon, Naruto already had a plan forming before he held his axe up. With the Uzumaki immediately throwing a tride at the helicopter's propellers before he ran towards the spear. The sudden projectile flying past them surprising Thorne, the demigods and the satyr. Even more shocking was when the axe embedded itself in the propellers, which soon became encased in ice, causing the helicopter to begin falling down towards the sea. With Naruto soon reaching the spear and grabbed it, before pulling his arm back and throwing it straight at Thorne. "What? Hooah!" Thorne shouted in anger at the sight of his helicopter being destroyed, only to scream in pain when the spear stabbed right through his abdomen, shocking the demigods and satyr again. "What just happened?" Andromeda yelled in disbelief, wondering how they suddenly went from being surrounded to the helicopter being destroyed and Thorne being hit by Thalia's spear. "I just had to save your asses, that's what happened," said Naruto, narrowing his eyes at the demigods, making everyone look at him. Naruto WH what just happened, what is going on? What was that thing you threw? Bianca said, freaking out over what's happening. First being taken hostage by their vice principal, then a girl with a sword shows up and is then taken hostage too, before going on about demigods and monsters. Only to be knocked down by some invisible girl, with another showing up with a spear and shield, along with a new transfer student who had goat legs. Now her friend Crush shows up, throws something at a helicopter that covers it in ice before throwing a spear at whatever Thorne was. The brunette honestly wasn't sure if she's hallucinating or having some crazy nightmare anymore. "Hey Bianca, I'm really sorry I got here late, but I promise I'll explain everything." But first, Naruto said, turning back towards Thorne, grabbing the spear still stabbed through him, making the manticore growl in pain and anger. "You're gonna tell me why exactly you tried kidnapping my friends, Thorne. And please talk quickly, I get angry when those I care about are threatened," said Naruto, crouching down and glaring at Thorne, with the monster returning the glare. "Uzumaki. I should have realized you were one of those fools. I can smell their stench on you," Thorne growled, making the whiskered Redeed smile coldly before twisting the spear again. "If you know what I am, then you should know compared to the majority of my kind, even the half-bloods, I'm one of the very few nice ones. That can change very quickly if you don't give me what I want," Naruto said, the manticore merely growling in anger while slowly lifting his tail up to strike the Uzumaki in the back. "Watch out," Annabeth yelled, seeing Thorne's tail about to stab Naruto. "Die," roared Thorne as his tail lunged forward. Only for him to be shocked when Naruto's hand shot out and wrapped around the base of his stinger, before screaming in pure agony when he squeezed it tightly. "That was your last mistake," Naruto stated standing up before with single pull, he ripped Thorne's tail off, much to the shock of the demigods, while Thorne's screams grew louder. Before Naruto held out his hand, recalling his axe, shocking the group even further that he could summon his weapon like that. That's so cool. Thalia muttered, wishing she could summon her spear like that. Awesome. You can throw your axe and then summon it, it's like in those comics of that guy with the hammer. Said Naiko in excitement and amazement with Naruto resisting the urge to roll his eyes at the ironic comparison. The general will have your head, boy. Thorne growled, glaring hatefully at Naruto. Your Titan masters can try and fail. Naruto retorted before bringing his axe down on Thorne's neck, decapitating the manticore which dissolved into golden dust. With the monster dead, Naruto turned towards the demigods and Satyr, seeing Annabeth and her friends regarding him warily before he walked up to Bianca and Naiko. Hey, are you two alright? Naruto asked, looking them over, with the siblings nodding in response. We're fine, Andromeda tried helping us before Thorne grabbed her too. Where did you get that axe? And where did you learn to use it? Naiko asked, eager to learn where Naruto got his axe and if he'd be able to get a weapon he could summon too. Yeah, we're fine. Completely freaking out and questioning what's even real anymore, but other than that perfectly fine. Said Bianca with a strained smile while trying to calm her continuously rising nerves. Right, that's understandable and sorry that you both had to find out about all this, like that. But I will explain it all, I promise. Said Naruto, making Bianca nod slowly and calm down a little, knowing if he made a promise then he'd keep it. Naruto then turned towards the girls and Satyr, only to see Andromeda pointing her sword at him, Annabeth regarding him warily, Underwood holding a set of reed pipes with a nervous expression, and the third girl reclaimed her spear and shield, holding them up as well. The third girl looked to be the oldest, being 15 years old with spiky black hair that went down to her shoulders and 2 bangs on each side of her face, a blue highlighted bang, and a blue thunder hairpin that seemed to glow. All of which made her blue eyes stand out like a couple of lightning-filled sapphires on her pale, but beautiful, face while having a splash of freckles across her nose. As for her clothing, she wore a short-sleeved black shirt with blue lightning on the front, a sleeveless fishnet shirt, while having a black leather jacket worn over them that also had blue lightning on it, along with having both a white interior and borders. All of which was short enough to expose her midriff. On her arms, she wore a pair of fishnet arm sleeves that started her mid-upper arms and stopped just short of her black fingerless, which has steel-knuckled gloves, along with blue lightning on them, as well. On her lower body, she wore dark gray jeans, with a belt that had a blue lightning lock, blue socks and black steel-toed hunting boots. At least the Olympians are capable of making something beautiful. Naruto thought looking at her, Annabeth and Andromeda, along with Bianca, seeing all 4 were already incredibly beautiful and would only grow more so. Who are you? Questioned Andromeda suspiciously at who this guy was, given how he not only approached her and Annabeth before, now with what he did and knows. The guy who saved your asses after you all let yourselves be defeated like children. Naruto said, narrowing his eyes at them, making the 3 frown. Hey. We did our best. How are we supposed to know Thorne had a damn helicopter? Retorted Thalia, glaring at him, only to recoil slightly when he returned the glare. Well, you're the daughter of Zeus, aren't you god of lightning and the sky? Why not bring a bolt of lightning down on top of the copter or control the wind to knock it off course? Or maybe do what I just did before and throw your spear at the monster rather than charge at it. Said Naruto, with the Ravenet flinching at his words, unable to come up with a response since he had a point of what she could have done. And you, daughter of Poseidon, I'm guessing. Why didn't you use the weapons you had? Said Naruto turning to Andromeda. I couldn't fight without Bianca and Naiko getting hurt. And Thorne would have killed us if we tried jumping into the ocean. Andromeda said with a frown, not liking to be reprimanded when there was nothing she could do. What's on the ground? Naruto asked calmly, confusing Andromeda at the random question. Wha said Andromeda, only to fall silent when the whiskered Reed walked up and looked down at her. What is on the ground? Repeated Naruto, the daughter of Poseidon, gulping at how close he was. Essence snow. Andromeda replied, with the Uzumaki nodding at this. Then tell me, what is snow? Questioned Naruto, with Annabeth's and Thalia's eyes soon widening in realization, before looking down at what he's getting at. It's you FR frozen wa said Andromeda, only to fall silent in realization. Yes, it's frozen water, last I checked, Poseidon can control water. So, unless you have 0 training in your literal god-given abilities, then you have no excuse. Remember that the next time you try making a pointless argument, kid. Naruto explained before turning towards Annabeth. I'm not a kid. Andromeda said, willing to admit her faults and that he did have a point, but refused to be talked down to like that, before falling silent when Naruto looked down at her again. Would you prefer little girl, instead? Asked Naruto, only for Andromeda to scoff. I don't know, would you like it if I called you, kitty, with those whiskers of yours? Andromeda asked, making Naruto become momentarily slack-jawed at the comeback before regaining his composure and deciding to continue with his lecture. Shall we go over your own mistakes or are you able to figure them out on your own? Naruto asked, the daughter of Athena shaking her head while covering her face. I could have attacked Thorne when I was invisible, possibly even killed him if I was able to get close enough. Or I could have distracted him, giving Andromeda an opening to attack along with Thalia and Grover, or let her get Bianca and Nico out of harm's way. Said Annabeth, being able to figure out what she could have done better after Naruto began listing their mistakes. Yes, you could have. All of you had several options to choose from to deal with Thorne and the helicopter before being surrounded and left helpless. But, instead, you choose to just rush in recklessly and fight head-on, completely forgetting about your own abilities. You're simply lucky I showed up when I did, otherwise it would have ended much worse. Naruto said, with the three demigods looking down at being reprimanded and unable to make any retorts. We're sorry. Annabeth, Andromeda, and Thalia said, only to yelp when Naruto smacked each of them on their heads. Don't be sorry, be better. Said Naruto, narrowing his eyes at them, making the three nod in response, seeing it as a lesson they had to learn, while being thankful that nothing too bad happened. Can we get some answers, please? Bianca asked, waving her hand at them, hoping to finally know what's going on, before Naruto rubbed his eyes while mentally groaning. Not yet, unfortunately, we still have a problem. Naruto said with Andromeda, Annabeth, Thalia and Grover tensing, while Bianca moved Nico behind her before looking around warily in case something else jumps out. All of you in the trees, come out, now. Shouted Naruto, turning towards the forest, with the others doing the same, the three demigods ready for what would come out. Only for a dozen girls, the youngest being 10 and the oldest being 14, to come out from the trees, all of them carrying bows, while wearing silver parkas and jeans. With them also having determined and suspicious expressions as they looked at Naruto, with a few even looking ready to even shoot him. The hunters, Annabeth said in surprise, not expecting the hunters to be here. Oh great, like things weren't bad enough. Muttered Thalia, annoyed that she now had to deal with her least favorite group, as one of the girls stepped forward. The girl appeared to be 14 years old with her being tall, graceful, and gorgeously beautiful. She had brown eyes, a slightly upturned nose, copper-colored skin, and the silver circlet braided into the top of her long, dark hair gave her the impression of a Persian princess. Permission to kill, my lady? The girl asked, not hesitating and aiming an arrow right at Naruto's heart, much to the demigod's shock and disbelief, along with Bianca's and Nico's worry for their friend. Seriously, Nightshade, can you cool it for like 5 minutes? Thalia exclaimed in disbelief that despite her grudge against boys, she tried to attack Naruto, despite likely having seen what he could do. You should listen to her. Because if you don't lower your bow, you better pray that the first shot kills me. Naruto warned while holding his axe at the ready, with the axe head soon being encased in ice. So, this is not a fight any of us would want. Another girl said, putting a hand on Zoe's arm, lowering her bow. The second girl looked to be 12 or 13, had long silver-white hair, held up by an icy blue headband with white swirling designs, while a few strands that framed her face, moonlight pale skin, eyes that were a mix of pale blue, silver and periwinkle with narrow pupils. Her attire consisted of pale blue fur boots, bandages wrapped around her lower right leg and her left thigh, a dangerously short white kimono, with cloud-like designs along the edges, and held closed by a pale blue obi, a beaded necklace with a large blue stone on the end, bandages wrapped around her arms, pale blue fur gloves, and finally a white fur animal pelt draped across her shoulders. With her own bow looking as if it was made from ice. Very well, my lady. Zoe said with a bow to the girl before stepping back, with the second girl then facing Naruto with a wary expression. And you must be Artemis then. Stated Naruto, shocking Andromeda, Bianca, and Nico, while Annabeth, Thalia, and Grover were already aware of who the goddess was. You know who I am. Artemis said, with Naruto nodding in response. It's kind of obvious, plus your look reminds of me of the last hunter goddess I encountered. Naruto said, with the moon goddess raising a brow at this before looking down at herself. Yes, despite our differing beliefs, she has my respect for her skill and hunting prowesses. Said Artemis, knowing who he was talking about, while the hunters and demigods were only confused at what or who they were talking about. Now, I'm sure you'll understand that you'll need to come with me and explain what you're doing so far from your own land and your own kind. Artemis said, narrowing her eyes at Naruto, with a whiskered Reed simply nodding while hooking his axe to one of his pants belt loops. As long as your Girl Scouts don't do anything to annoy me or try to attack me, the same goes for the rest of the children on that mountain of yours. Naruto replied, the hunters glaring at him for the insult, while Artemis's eye twitched before giving a short nod. Okay, Whiskers has definitely just gone up a notch in my book. Thalia whispered to Gover, Annabeth and Andromeda, with the former two rolling their eyes at that, not being the least bit surprised given her distaste for the hunters. Then please, would you all join us at our camp? I'm sure all of us can be given some answers," said Artemis, motioning them to follow her and her hunters, with Andromeda, Annabeth, Thalia with her being rather reluctant, and Grover followed them. While Naruto looked at Bianca and Nico, nodding and smiling reassuringly at them, before they joined the others and headed for the hunters' camp. Naruto gritted his teeth, suppressing a scream of pain as a massive stone column slammed into him, sending the 8-year-old crashing through a tree. His eyes widening as he saw the tree about to fall on top of him, managing to roll out of the way in time before it did. Before he looked at what had hit him, a monster known as a troll. Trolls were massive creatures, with Naruto barely coming up to its knees, with large tusks on the edge of their faces. All trolls had massive strength, durability, and stamina, along with having higher intelligence than most monsters, making them more dangerous as they could think and plan. And if that wasn't enough, each troll also carried gigantic stone totems with runes carved into them. With the runes strengthening their abilities and granted them power over an element. The whiskered Reed quickly jumped back when the troll shot a blast of flames out of its hand at him, roaring as it charged him with its pillar held above its head. Weapon. I need a weapon, something, anything. Naruto thought as he ran through the forest, looking around for anything that he could use against the troll, before noticing the shadow descending towards him, rolling out of the way in time to avoid being crushed by the troll's totem. Only to bite his cheek when a wave of flames erupted from the impact, burning his left side and throwing him back against a tree. Grunting as he forced himself to stand up, Naruto couldn't help but feel relief when he saw a sharp-looking rock sticking out of the snow. Thanking whatever god decided to show a little mercy, Naruto grabbed the rock before jumping out of the way of the troll's fist as it smashed through the tree. With the Uzumaki rushing the troll, getting in close and began stabbing and slashing at its leg, the monster roaring at the attacks before raising its foot up to crush the demigod. Only to roar in pain when Naruto took the opportunity to stab the rock deep into its foot, with it being buried even deeper when it stomped down. That should at least slow it down a little. Naruto thought before he took off running again, knowing while it may slow the troll down, it'll also make it even angrier. Unfortunately, Naruto didn't get far when something slammed into his back and sent him flying, making him bite his cheek again to avoid screaming in pain. Though he did let out a grunt when he crashed into the ground, looking to see he's back in the clearing they started in. Along with seeing what crashed into him when a large tree came flying out of the forest, towards him. Naruto's eyes widened at the sight before he tried moving out of the way, barely dodging the tree as it crashed down where he once was. Though he was then forced to raise his hands, gritting his teeth as the troll's totem smashed down against him. The Uzumaki felt the ground crack beneath as the troll kept pushing the totem down to crush to him. With Naruto using all his strength to keep it from getting closer, only to squeeze his eyes shut when the runes on it lit up with fiery energy and began burning his hands. Come on. Push it back. Naruto thought, struggling to push the totem back towards the troller away from him. Knowing if he didn't do it soon, then he'll either be crushed or burned alive, given he wouldn't be getting any help. That thought made Naruto growl in anger before his eyes snapped open, with them now glowing and sparking with electricity as he glared at the troll. Before, slowly, he began pushing the totem back until he was standing up, panting in anger. Only to shout and throw his arms up, sending the totem flying straight at the troll's face. The troll looking in shock at the sight before grunting in pain as its totem smashed into its face, sending the monster stumbling backwards. With Naruto jumping up and grabbing one of the troll's tusks, flipping around to land on the back of the troll's head. Naruto then began punching the troll repeatedly in the head, making it stumble around with each blow. Until the troll managed to right itself, roaring as it tried throwing Naruto off, only for the whiskered Reed to hold on and continue punching it. Before with a final punch, Naruto jumped off as the troll went falling to the ground with a loud crash. The Uzumaki panting as he landed on the ground, only to jump up and slam his feet right down onto the troll's back when it tried getting up, before he went over to the troll's head. Glaring at the monster, Naruto grabbed the troll by its tusks, grunting as he twisted the troll's head around, snapping its neck. Though Naruto didn't stop there, before he broke one of the troll's tusks off and began repeatedly stabbing it in the head and neck. You're nothing to me. You worthless brainless monster. You're nothing. Die. Naruto shouted as he kept stabbing the troll, not caring that it was already dead. Only for the Uzumaki to be pulled from his rage-induced state when someone grabbed his wrist, stopping his assault on the troll's body. Gasping when the person lifted him up before tossing him onto the ground. With Naruto's anger instantly fading when he saw the familiar cold-blooded and serious expression on his father's face. I did as you asked, father, the troll's dead. Naruto said, bowing his head, while his father continued to simply look at him. I said no weapons. Stated the god, making Naruto gulp before quickly tossing the broken tusk aside. It was already dead when I broke its tusk off," said Naruto, knowing if his father told him to do something, then he had to do exactly as he said or else. But the god remaining silent before walking over to the troll's feet, Naruto paling slightly as he ripped open the troll's foot and grabbed the rock he used against it. "Then explain this," he demanded, Naruto shaking a little since he knew he was in trouble before he gagged and clutched his stomach when his father flicked the rock at him. Holding back, otherwise the rock would have gone straight through him. "But I suppose you did succeed in killing it with your own hands. So, you'll be walking back to the temple of Tur after you find and kill 3 ancients while bringing their hearts back as proof," said the god, causing Naruto to look at him in disbelief. "3 and an ancients," Naruto said, not believing he wanted to find and kill 3 ancients and bring back their hearts. Finding ancients was hard enough due to their bodies being made entirely out of rock, making them difficult to spot them if they're sleeping. But killing them was nearly impossible with how their bodies are basically indestructible, and his father is telling him to kill 3. "Would you prefer 3 soul eaters instead? Or perhaps 3 dragons?" demanded the god, narrowing his eyes dangerously, the Uzumaki quickly shaking his head. No, I'll find the ancients and bring their hearts back, I swear," Naruto said, knowing he shouldn't push his luck. "But I expect them by nightfall. Otherwise, we'll have to start your training from the beginning if you can't handle such a simple task," the god said before vanishing in a bolt of lightning. Once he was sure his father was gone, Naruto collapsed to his hands and knees, spitting up blood while clutching his side, feeling the broken ribs from his fight with the troll. Not helped when his father flicked the rock at him, along with his burned hands. Having learned to suppress his pain and not let it show, as it'd only make things worse during his training. Only doing so when he knew he was alone or only those he could trust were around. Coughing and gagging for more moments, Naruto shakily stood up before leaving to track down 3 ancients, knowing he didn't have a lot of time left before nightfall. Present. 3 funking ancients, and what do I get after nearly dying against them to get their hearts in time? I expect you to be faster next time, Naruto thought as he and the others sat around the fire in the hunter's camp. But there being 7 large tents, all of them made from silver silk, curved in a crescent shape around one side of a bonfire. While a dozen white wolves acted as guards around the camp, as well as falcons up in the trees. After they arrived at camp, Annabeth, Andromeda, Thalia and Grover had begun explaining everything to Bianca and Nico about the Greek gods, monsters, and everything else. Artemis having also sent a few hunters to collect their belongings from Westover. While Naruto remained silent for the most part, still listening as they explained everything. But, instead, felt his mind drifting back to being raised and trained by his father. So the gods, the actual Greek gods, are real? That was really Artemis? Bianca asked, feeling her head spinning at all the information. Yeah, my mother's Athena, Andy's dad is Poseidon, Thalia's dad is Zeus, and Grover's a satyr, replied Annabeth, knowing it's a lot to take in for new demigods to learn the myths and stories they've heard about are real. This is awesome. Do you know whose kids we are? Questioned Nico in excitement, not believing his mythomagic game was actually real. We don't know, your godly parent is revealed when they claim you. But whoever they are, they must be important if Thorne wanted to take you both alive. Andromeda said, the brunette shivering at remembering what Thorne said about them either joining his army or being fed to monsters. That explains Nico, you remember last summer? Those guys who tried to attack us in the alley in DC? Bianca asked while looking at her brother, suddenly remembering the last time they were attacked, realizing they were monsters. And that bus driver. The one with the ram's horns. I told you that was real. Nico said with a smirk, pleased to know he'd been right. Yeah, and Thorne won't be the last monster you guys run into. Which is why we're here to bring you to Camp Half-Blood, where you'll be safe and be trained to protect yourselves. Thalia stated, making the siblings look at her, Bianca looking unsure, while Nico was excited at the idea of being trained. Will we get magic weapons, like Naruto's axe? Nico asked, really wanting to get his own weapon he could summon, with his question making the girls frown. That really depends on who your parent is and if he'll give you magical items. But I've never heard of any weapons that could be recalled like that before, except Annabeth muttered as she began thinking things over. And speaking of hay whiskers. Thalia said, looking at Naruto, snapping her fingers to get his attention, with the Uzumaki glancing at them. What? Said Naruto. Naruto? Why don't you seem surprised by any of this? Did you know about all of this? Bianca asked as she and the others looked at him. Yes, I knew, I've known about the gods my entire life. Naruto replied, surprising them that he's known his entire life. And you've never been to camp? Grover asked in disbelief that any demigod could know about the gods and not have been taken to camp. You're under the impression I'm Greek. Stated Naruto, surprising them again before Thalia and Andromeda frowned at him. That doesn't make any sense, there aren't any other gods besides the Greek gods. You'd have to be related to one of them. Andromeda said, with Naruto rolling his eyes at her words. And who told you the Olympians were the only gods? Do you honestly believe they alone rule this planet? No, there are more gods than you can even comprehend. Keep that in mind, as you never know when you may meet one and piss them off, kid. Said Naruto, with Andromeda scowling at him. Why don't you take your own advice, kitty? Andromeda retorted. Well, if you aren't a child of an Olympian or a minor god, then which pantheon do you come from? Questioned Thalia, wanting to know what kind of demigod Naruto was. Norse. Annabeth stated, making the others look at her, with the daughter of Athena looking at Naruto in realization. That's the pantheon you're from, aren't you? Your father is a Norse god. Said Annabeth, the whiskered Redeed looking at her with a raised brow before nodding. That's right, he's a member of the Aesir tribe. Naruto replied, not surprised she managed to figure it out. What are Norse gods? And the Aesir tribe? Bianca asked in confusion, not being familiar with different pantheons. Though they stopped when Zoe walked over to them, looking at Naruto in distaste, before speaking. Lady Artemis wishes to see thee, Andromeda Jackson, Bianca D'Angelo, Thalia Grace. As well as you, man. Said Zoe, looking at the four of them. You? It's you, how hard is that to say? Thalia said in annoyance before standing up along with Andromeda, Bianca, and Naruto. Hey Nico, why don't you show Grover how to play Mathemagic? Suggested Naruto, causing the younger boy to grin before he immediately began explaining the game to the satyr. Zoe escorted the four demigods to one of the tents, opening it to show Artemis already inside. With silk rugs and pillows covered the floor. And in the center, a golden brazier of fire seemed to burn without fuel or smoke. While behind Artemis was a polished oak display case where her bow rested, along with numerous pelts hanging from the walls. Sit, join us. Artemis said, motioning the four to sit down, with them doing so, though Thalia was more reluctantly than the others. If you try making the offer again, my answer is still no. Thalia stated, wanting to make it clear she wasn't joining the hunters. Understood, Thalia Grace. Though first I have business to discuss with the Aesir. Said Artemis, turning towards Naruto with narrowed eyes. Tell me, what are you doing in America, let alone this close to Olympus? Artemis asked, wanting to know what a Norse demigod was doing this far from their realm. This was the best place I could go to escape from the rest of my family, none of them would think or try to look for me here. Replied Naruto, the goddess frowning at this. You fled and decided to hide here. You could have gone anywhere else, yet you seem to choose here, specifically. Why? Said Artemis. Would you think to look for a giant hiding among ants? Naruto asked with a raised brow, with Artemis scowling in annoyance at this. Thou will, said Zoe, standing up only for Artemis to hold up her hand. Stand down, Zoe. As insulting as it is, he has a point. Artemis said reluctantly, knowing that the Olympians weren't anywhere close to their original power before the decline in their worship. So, there actually are other gods. Other pantheons, why weren't we ever told? Thalia said in disbelief and anger, not believing there were other pantheons of gods in the world, and none of them were ever told about it. Because of your dad. Naruto said, making the Ravenet look at him before turning back to Artemis, who nodded reluctantly again. He is correct again. Our father does not enjoy the idea of demigods learning the existence of other pantheons, believing it would lead to them losing faith in the Olympians if they didn't believe we were the sole power in the world. And having forbidden it from ever being revealed. Said Artemis, much to Andromeda's and Thalia's disbelief before they looked at Naruto. And you were told. How come you knew about other pantheons? Questioned Andromeda while frowning at this kind of information being kept hidden, being reminded of Zeus's refusal to believe Kronos was returning. Yes, I did say I've known about the gods my entire life. And why would other pantheons care if their children knew about the existence of other gods? They're secure in their power and stations, having no reason to fear being abandoned, and instead see it as making sure they're fully aware of everything the world. After all, a lot of gods wouldn't hesitate to vaporize you if you insulted them in any way or didn't show proper respect. Naruto replied, with Thalia and Andromeda frowning at this. So, is that everything or not? Questioned Naruto, looking at Artemis, with the goddess frowning at him. Who's your sire? Artemis asked, knowing that was the most important piece of information. With Naruto clenching his fists tightly before they all suddenly heard a crack of thunder in the sky, making all the girls look up before Andromeda looked at Thalia. That wasn't me. Thalia said, only to slowly turn towards Naruto along with the others, while Artemis's eyes widened and gained a hint of nervousness. Don't tell me, said Artemis, mentally praying it wasn't who she was thinking of. I go by Naruto Uzumaki, the last name of my mother, to help hide my identity and hide in plain sight. But my real name is Naruto Thorson. Naruto said, with Bianca, Thalia and Andromeda looking at him in shock, while Artemis covered her face, not believing what she just heard. Thorson? As in Thor. God of thunder. Magic hammer that only the worthy can lift. Appears in a lot of movies, video games and comic books. That Thor Andromeda asked, not believing Naruto was the son of Thor, with the Uzumaki groaning and pinching the bridge of his nose. I swear I hate those stupid pop culture depictions so much. First of all, Mjolnir can be lifted by anyone as long as they're strong enough, that whole being worthy thing is a load of crap. Secondly, how he's depicted in media is very different from how he really is, both in appearance and personality. And thirdly, yes, Thor is my father. Said Naruto, hating how his father is depicted as some muscular good-hearted hero in media, when that couldn't be farther from who he is. But most of all it left him bitter at how he's depicted, especially in Marvel comics and movies, being shown as a courageous and good-hearted deity. Constantly showing him of something that could have been, something that he wished was how his father was really like, at times. Well, he's suffered years of physical, mental, and emotional neglect and abuse from the actual god. Though, I'll admit, it's actually enjoyable whenever he's screwed over. Thought Naruto, smirking since he did enjoy that movie where his father was banished and stripped of his power and then ran over by a truck. And even if his origins are wrong, he also enjoyed how Loki is depicted as well, the trickster god being one of the few Norse gods he was on good terms with. However, the Uzumaki will also admit it was hilarious seeing Loki be treated as a ragdoll by the Hulk as well. Your father is Thor. And you had the brilliant idea to come here, Artemis demanded, knowing how dangerous things will get if the Aesir found out he was hiding near Olympus. As I said, none of them would think or try to look for me here. Said Naruto, with Bianca, Andromeda and Thalia looking between the two. Then thou should leave whilst you can. Stated Zoe, narrowing her eyes at the whiskered redeed. Believe me, sweetheart, I'd love nothing more than to avoid getting dragged into another messed up pantheon. But Bianca and Nico are now part of this, and I'm not going to abandon them. Naruto replied, making Bianca smile, happy that he was staying for her and her brother, while Zoe's face turned red in anger at the nickname. Sweetheart, I shall remove thy tongue, Zoe said, reaching for her hunting knives. Zoe. Said Artemis, giving her lieutenant a stern look, with Zoe scowling before crossing her arms. Yes, sit and pout, you already look like a princess with your pretty tiara, now you have the attitude of one. Naruto said with a smirk, while Zoe glared murderously at him, only to glare at Thalia when she started laughing. He's not wrong, Nightshade. Maybe you should wear a dress to complete the look. Thalia said, enjoying how Naruto was egging her on, with even Bianca and Andromeda laughing a little. Can you not antagonize my hunters any further, said Artemis, glaring at the Uzumaki in annoyance at what he started. I'll think about it, but no. Naruto replied, the mood goddess looking tempted to let Zoe attack him, before closing her eyes and taking a deep breath to calm herself down. Artemis then turned towards Bianca and Andromeda, wanting to get to the other reason she called them all in here. With Thalia's amusement vanishing, being replaced with a scowl, knowing what she was going to say next. Now then, there was one other matter I wish to discuss with both of you, Andromeda Jackson, Bianca D'Angelo. But first I need ask both of you about the manticore and anything it said as to why it was here and why it wanted you and your brother. Said Artemis, wanting to know what Thorne's purpose had been to capture Bianca and Nico. Bianca paling slightly at remembering when Thorne held them captive, while Andromeda clenched her fists given how Thorne was working with Luke. He said something about like something called the Great Stirring, that a lot of monsters were appearing. Along with how someone called the General would explain things to us. Bianca said, remembering some of what Thorne had said, Andromeda nodding in agreement, remembering as well. Artemis frowned gravely at this before looking at Zoe, seeing her lieutenant had paled at the mention of the General, and knew why. There was also something else, he said, that soon they'd have the most important monster of all, one apparently able to bring about the downfall of Olympus. Added Andromeda, with Artemis going completely still at hearing this. Then it seems I was right about the scent I had caught. Things I haven't hunted in millennia are coming back, and one so old I'd nearly forgotten about it. Artemis said, realizing she's been too slow in noticing the signs about what's returned and knew she needed to find the monster before the General did. What are you talking about? Thalia asked with a frown, annoyed that the goddess wasn't telling them anything. We came here tonight after sensing the manticore, but he wasn't what I was seeking. It was something else, something incredibly dangerous if the General got his hands on it. Said Artemis, the daughter of Zeus's eye twitching at not getting a straight answer, with Naruto looking at her and Andromeda. Are all Olympians this cryptic and never give straight answers? Questioned Naruto, genuinely curious if the entire Greek pantheon was like this. Unfortunately. Thalia replied in annoyance, as even after being revived, she still wasn't told everything, and apparently there was even more being hidden than she originally expected. Uchiha. Said Andromeda, remembering when she first arrived at Camp Half-Blood and everything that was kept from her. That's because we hide such information for good reason and tell you it when you are ready. Artemis said, the whiskered redeed raising a brow. And who exactly decides when they're ready? You? Their parents who they barely know. Some oracle that speaks in even more cryptic rhymes. Keeping information like that is only a good way to make them distrust you. So is it really any wonder why so many demigods are starting to prefer the Titans if they can't even get a few simple answers from their parents? Naruto said, making the goddess frown in annoyance. See kitty, here, gets it? Said Andromeda, not wanting to agree with Naruto but also knowing he had a point. Quiet kid, grown-ups are talking. Said Naruto, the ravenet looking at him in annoyance before turning back to the goddess. Well, this information is better kept away from them, as the fewer who know about the monster the better. Stated Artemis, Naruto now looking at her with an unamused expression. Now, as for what I wish to discuss with you, Andromeda and Bianca. I wish to offer you both the chance to join my hunters, to hunt by side for eternity, to remain maidens forever and reject love for as long as you live. Artemis offered, surprising the two girls at the offer. It is a great honor, devoting oneself to Lady Artemis, living with your new sisters, and swearing off males. Thou would be granted eternal youth, to live forever and hunt. Added Zoe, hoping that they'll take the offer to join the hunters. I don't think I'd really want something like that. Said Bianca, unsure about the idea of remaining young forever while hunting deadly monsters. Maybe she would have accepted the offer before, liking the idea getting to live her own life, rather than always being a parent to Naiko. But now she's had time to relax and grow with Naruto to help look after Naiko, finally giving her the chance to enjoy some time to herself for a change. And swearing off boys and love forever no thanks. Bianca mentally added while glancing at Naruto, something that Artemis noticed, making her frown. Very well. And you, Andromeda? Said Artemis, turning to the daughter of Poseidon with Thalia mentally scoffing, highly doubting that Andromeda would ever consider joining the hunters and leaving camp. But the longer she didn't hear Andromeda reject the offer, the more Thalia started to worry before she turned towards her cousin. Only to see Andromeda had a thoughtful look on her face, much to Thalia's disbelief. Andy? Thalia asked, worried and hoping she wasn't actually thinking of taking the offer, before her hope was dashed when the younger Ravenet looked at Artemis. There'd really be no interactions with any boys, at all? Andromeda asked, much to Thalia's disbelief, while Artemis nodded. None whatsoever. The only times you'd be around them would be the times when the hunt stays at camp. Otherwise, we're always on the move, tracking monsters and other prey. Replied Artemis before she and Zoe smiled happily when Andromeda immediately nodded. Then I accept, I'll join the hunters. Said Andromeda, liking the chance to not interact with boys ever again and risk being betrayed like with Luke. And after what happened with him, she also had no interest in wanting to pursue a romantic relationship with anyone either. Are you kidding me? Thalia demanded, shooting up and looked at Andromeda in disbelief, anger and hurt that she's actually joining the hunters. You're seriously just going to join them? What about the camp? Everyone there needs your help, especially now. Said Thalia, hoping to change her mind. No, they don't. The only time I was really needed was to find the Master Bolt, after that I didn't do anything. Clarice was the one who got the quest to find the Golden Fleece, and I'm sure she would have been able to succeed even if I hadn't snuck away to get it myself. And besides, you're a better leader than I could be, everyone already looks to you for what to do, anyway. Andromeda said, muttering the last part a little bitterly. While she may like her cousin and admit Thalia was much cooler, stronger, and a natural leader compared to her. That didn't Andromeda couldn't help but feel a little bitter at how everyone instantly starts going to her for advice and help, that she's the one who always makes the plans. Along with Chiron having even taught her to manipulate the mist, something he never did for her. A few months ago, I was a tree. The rest of the campers barely know me, the only reason they'd follow me is because of who my dad is. But they do know you, they rely on you, and they are going to need your help Andromeda, we all will. Thalia said. Well maybe I don't want to be the hero anymore. Retorted Andromeda, standing up and facing her cousin. I didn't ask to be Poseidon's daughter or to be a demigod at all. I definitely didn't ask to be accused of stealing some all-powerful magic glow stick or a stupid helmet. The only reason I went on that quest was to save my mom. I went to the Sea of Monsters to save Grover and help save the camp. Both times I nearly died multiple times, all of which only happened because of someone I thought was my friend, someone that I loved. Well now I'm actually making a choice of my own, and not one anyone else decided for me. Andromeda said, letting out some of her frustration that's built up ever since she first learned she was a demigod and only grew after Luke's betrayal. Then what about your mom? Are you just never going to see her again? Demanded Thalia, not caring if it was a low blow to bring up her mother, not if it meant getting through to Andromeda. Feeling some hope that she succeeded when she flinched, only for Andromeda to look away. She'll understand. Muttered Andromeda, with the daughter of Zeus looking at her in anger before scoffing. Do whatever you want then, we probably will be better off without your whining. Thalia said scathingly before glaring at Zoe, while Andromeda flinched at her words. And I hope you're proud, Nightshade, you finally got a daughter of the big three to join your group of man-haters," said Thalia before storming out of the tent. While Naruto and Bianca had watched the exchange silently before the Uzumaki put a hand on her shoulder and tilted his head towards the exit. Nodding in understanding, Bianca got up and left, with Naruto standing as well, but didn't immediately leave and looked at Andromeda. "What? You wanna criticize my decision too, kitty?" Andromeda demanded, hiding the hurt from Thalia's words before then leaving, with Naruto shrugging in response. "No, you wanna join the hunters, that's your choice, kid. But ask yourself this, are you joining because it's what you really want or just an excuse to run from the pain?" Naruto said as he exited the tent before Andromeda could respond. After leaving Artemis's tent, Naruto rejoined Bianca, Nico, Thalia, Annabeth and Grover, the latter two having downcast expressions, while Thalia still looked angered. The Uzumaki guessing she and Bianca must have told them about Andromeda's choice of joining the hunters. With it not being long before Artemis came out with Zoe and Andromeda, the daughter of Poseidon's skin now faintly glowing silver and wearing the same silver clothes as the rest of the hunters. Before Artemis announced that they'd be heading to camp, much to the dismay of the hunters. Even more so, when she revealed they'd be traveling there in her brother's chariot. Leading to them all standing on a hill waiting for dawn to arrive, the hunters having taken down their camp just as quickly as they set it up. "How are you not freezing like that?" Bianca asked as she looked at Naruto in disbelief as he didn't look the least bit cold, despite his light clothing, the same being said for the hunters, who didn't look fazed by the cold. While she, Nico, Annabeth, Thalia and Grover stayed huddled together in the snow. "Niflheim is much colder than this," replied Naruto with a shrug, having had to deal with much colder temperatures than this. "What'lheim? What kind of place is that?" Thalia asked with a confused frown at the name. "That's the realm of fog and ice, right? One of the first two primordial realms in creation," Annabeth said, making the others look at her in surprise, with Naruto raising a brow at her. "That's right, it's nothing but a barren and frozen wasteland, the warmest it gets is 40 degrees below freezing. That's not counting how it has 11 poisonous rivers running through it, so you also can't drink the water unless you want to die. And of course the poisonous mist that slowly kills you the longer you stay inside it, plus anything there that manages to survive and wants to kill you," Naruto explained, much to their shock and nervousness at such a place existing. "And you've been there before, why?" Bianca asked in disbelief at why anyone would travel to such a place willingly. "Part of my training, spending a year in Niflheim with nothing but my own hands. I think that was a rare time my father was almost impressed with me," Naruto said, casually, which only increased their shock and horror. He spent an entire year there alone. "Your dad sounds like a peep," stated Nico, only to yelp when Bianca smacked him on the head. "Nico?" Bianca hissed, even though she agreed that Naruto's father sounded like a bastard for forcing him into such a place alone, but that didn't mean she'd tolerate Nico swearing. "That's putting it mildly," said Naruto with a small, amused smirk, before looking at Annabeth. "You also seem to be pretty knowledgeable about Norse mythology." "Why?" Naruto asked, since while he expected her to put the pieces together on what pantheon he's part of, now he's intrigued that her knowledge extended past that. "I got bored after reading up on only Greek mythology. So I figured reading about other mythologies would prove useful, eventually, or just see how they compared to the Olympians." Annabeth replied with a shrug, having never considered any information as useless, even if it was about things she originally thought were genuine myths. Now it seemed like she had the chance to learn what was fact and fiction about what she researched. "Annie, you really need a better hobby," said Thalia with a deadpan expression, wishing her friend would get other hobbies than reading books or studying architecture. "My hobbies are just fine," retorted Annabeth, letting out a huff before everyone's attention turned forward when the sky started lighting up. "About time. He's so lazy during the winter." Artemis muttered in annoyance at her twin slowness. "Have you considered having a giant wolf chase him? I'm sure Skoll wouldn't mind chasing a different sun for a while. Though it'll probably be a much shorter chase," said Naruto, causing the moon goddess to look at him in annoyance. "I see you have the same enjoyment of causing conflict as the rest of your kind," said Artemis, the whiskered redeed shrugging in response. "Just part of my charm, kid number 2. Though, do you really have the right to judge me on causing conflict, given your pantheon's track record with causing it?" Naruto asked rhetorically, with Andromeda now giving him an annoyed look as well. "Go play with a ball of yarn, kitty," Andromeda said. "Sorry, what was that? I don't speak kid language," said Naruto, smirking at them, further annoying the goddess and her hunter, only for everyone to see a burst of light on the horizon. "Everyone, but the annoying one, look away until he parks," said Artemis, with the hunters all quickly turning away along with the demigods and Satyr. "Hey, sorry," she said, "for you to not look away," Naruto said while looking in the direction of a certain hunter, causing said hunter to glare at him. "Thou will be silent, boy," The same goes to you, Grace. Zoe retorted before glaring at Thalia when she began snickering. You're the one who responded, Nightshade. I guess that means you already know how annoying you are. Thalia said tauntingly, enjoying the chance to get under her skin. She's right. I was just looking in your general direction, so I could have been looking at someone else, but you assumed I was talking to you. Something you want to share, princess? Questioned Naruto with his smirk growing, while Zoe looked ready to shoot them both. Odds, it's like there's two of them, now. Muttered Annabeth, not liking how similar Naruto and Thalia already were in annoying people, already feeling the coming headaches. Does this happen often? Bianca asked, looking at the daughter of Athena before glancing between Thalia and Zoe, seeing how the two really didn't seem to like each other. Only when they're around each other. Replied Grover. The bright light soon faded, letting everyone turn back to see a red convertible Maserati Spider, with all the snow around it melting in a perfect circle. With the driver stepping out, Naruto also noticing how Andromeda tensed when he did and Thalia's amused expression from taunting Zoe turned into a scowl. But the driver was tall, looking to be 17 or 18 years old, with wavy, sandy blonde hair, tanned skin, sunny blue eyes, and outdoorsy good looks. Along with wearing simple jeans, loafers, and a sleeveless t-shirt. And now I'm angry again. Thalia stated, not liking how Apollo looked so similar to Luke, being reminded of why Andromeda joined the hunters again. I know a giant wolf that loves to eat gods. Offered Naruto, the Ravenet seeming to contemplate the idea. Don't even think about it. Annabeth said quickly, knowing who Naruto was talking about. Lil sis. What's up? You never call. You never write. I was getting worried. Apollo said, smiling brightly at his sister, with Artemis eyeing an annoyance. I'm fine, Apollo, and right now in no mood for games because of him. Said Artemis, pointing at the Uzumaki, not in the mood for Apollo's attempts to annoy her. Because of Uchiha. Said Apollo, only for the sun god to scream and recoil when he saw Naruto, surprising the demigods and some of the hunters at his reaction. What's an Aesir doing here? Are there more? Are they invading? Please tell me that Soul isn't here. Apollo said, looking around with a panicked expression before Artemis backhanded him across the face. Calm down, you idiot. He's only a demigod and the rest don't know he's here, for now, anyway. And no, Soul isn't around, but keep screaming like that and I'm sure she'll happily come down here. Artemis said, glaring at her brother with Apollo slowly nodding, shakily. Right, yeah, of course. So what did you need, sis? Questioned Apollo, still looking around nervously at Naruto. I need you to give us a ride to Camp Half-Blood, then go straight to Olympus. And make it fast since I'm needed elsewhere. Said Artemis, wanting to get her hunters settled at camp, then report back to Olympus before hunting the monster that's returned. Right, yep. Definitely need to get moving. Apollo said, wincing slightly and rubbing his head before pulling out his keys and pressed the security alarm button. But the Maserati Spider soon transforming into a large shuttle bus, big enough to fit all the hunters and the demigods. Everybody inside, we're burning daylight. Said Apollo as the doors opened, allowing everyone to file inside. It wasn't long before everyone was inside, with the hunters all moving to sit in the back together, making Naruto shake his head before looking at Artemis. Good job isolating impressionable young girls from the rest of society to the point they think everyone else is diseased, truly, bravo. Out of curiosity, would they choose dying over accepting help from Guy? Or would they accept help from such lowly beings, kid number 2? Naruto asked, with Artemis growling lowly at him. There is nothing wrong with my hunters. And I am not a kid. Retorted Artemis, angered at the insult to her hunters. Sorry, like I told kid number 1, I don't speak kid language. Said Naruto before taking a seat beside Bianca, while Artemis looked ready to shoot him before taking a few deep breaths and sat behind her brother. Drive, now. Artemis ordered, Apollo quickly nodding in response before sitting in the driver's seat and started it, with the bus soon taking off into the sky. So what was that exactly, back there? With the way Apollo reacted to you? Thalia asked after a few moments, looking at Naruto with a raised brow. Curious about the sun god's reaction, along with wanting to distract herself from being high up in the sky. Yeah, it almost seemed like he was scared once he realized you were an Aesir. Did something happen between the Greek and Norse pantheons? Questioned Annabeth, unable to help her desire to know what might have happened, with Bianca, Nico, and Grover looking at him also interested. How much do you know about the god's power? Naruto said, getting confused looks from them. The god's power? Repeated Bianca, unsure what he meant by that. Let me be more specific, do you know what gives the gods their power? Naruto asked, which only confused them further. Aren't they just all powerful? Nothing gives them their power. Nico said, with the whiskered Redeed shaking his head. Well, it's true all gods are extremely powerful, none of them are truly all powerful. After all, look at Selene and Helios, both of them fated due to not being worshipped by the Romans, leading kid number 2 and Skirtchazer Jr. being given the moon and sun. And that's really what it comes down to, faith and belief, that's what truly gives gods their power. It's what gives everything power, just by believing in something you give it strength, you make it real. Understand? Explained Naruto, with the demigods and Saturn nodding slowly in response. That still doesn't explain why Apollo seems to be scared of you, or the Aesir anyway. Annabeth said, with Naruto looking at Thalia, the Ravenet frowning before glancing at the twin archers, before her eyes widened slightly. Because the deities of the Norse pantheon are stronger, aren't they? Thalia stated, making them look at her while Naruto nodded in response. Yeah, they are, for now anyway. It wasn't always like that though, back when the Olympians were still worshipped and seen as real, they were stronger than the Aesir. The only ones capable of rivaling them were my father, Odin, and potentially Balder. But the latter is only because he possessed true invulnerability, making it impossible for him to be killed or injured for long, or even feel pain. But as time passed and their worship began dwindling, the Olympians' power dwindled as well. Now the only worship they get are from their demigods, legacies, followers and cults, as well as drawing power from their domains. But even then, they're no longer at their peak anymore. Go ahead and tell me I'm wrong, God of Truth. Naruto said, looking right at Apollo, with the others looking at the twin archers as well. Only to see Apollo frowning deeply while holding the steering wheel tightly, with Artemis crossing her arms and looking away. With their silence being all the confirmation they needed. But wouldn't the same apply to the Norse pantheon? No one really believes they're real anymore, wouldn't they have grown weaker? Bianca asked curiously. Normally, yes, but you don't necessarily need to believe something is already real to give it power. You just need to believe in it, and what can inspire more belief than a hero? Naruto said, making some of them frown in confusion. The comics, right. The comics, movies, shows, games, everything Norse gods have appeared in. Stated Annabeth, the Uzumaki nodding in response. Yeah. Even if they aren't even close to being accurate and my father is the main god depicted, all of that still inspires belief in the Norse pantheon as a whole, which in turn gives them power. So while many know they're actually real, they still believe in them, giving them power and making them strong. There are also still those that hold onto the old ways and worship the gods. The same can be said for a lot of other pantheons, people may no longer believe they're real, but they still have worshippers. Said Naruto, the demigods looking at him with wide eyes. Damn. Thalia muttered, feeling a blow to her pride with how far down the Olympians had moved on the food chain, wondering if any other pantheon would care she's the daughter of Zeus or brush her off. But what about how he reacted to Sol? Who even is Sol? Questioned Thalia, wondering who that was. The Norse goddess of the sun, except she's the personification of the sun itself and wasn't simply given the title, making her much stronger. And the Skirtchazer Jr. had the smart idea to try flirting with her. You want to tell us how that ended, Sunspot? Naruto replied looking at Apollo again. No. Apollo muttered with a light whine in his tone as he lowered his head, while Artemis covered her face in embarrassment. Okay. Sol tricked him into believing she was returning his advances and convinced him to turn into her, which was just a trick as she was able to get Skoll to chase after Apollo for a while. Except, he didn't have her experience in avoiding the wolf, so he was able to catch up pretty quickly. And when Skoll caught up, he let's say got a new stick and balls to play with. Said Naruto with a smirk, much to their shock before Thalia and Andromeda began laughing, with Annabeth and Bianca covering their mouths to stop their own giggles from escaping, the hunters' overall reactions being a mix of the two, while Grover and Nico subconsciously crossed their legs in horror. It's not funny. Do you know how long it took it to regrow? Hell, that wolf is meant to eat gods, so I was lucky that it even grew back in the first place. Apollo said, shivering at the phantom pains. Even worse was that he became terrified to fly the sun chariot for a while, afterwards, not wanting to risk encountering Solar Skull again. Father said you deserved it for trying to interact with another pantheon. You were honestly lucky that he was in a good mood at the time and felt that was punishment enough. Said Artemis, with an almost unnoticeable smirk, having enjoyed seeing her brother taken down a few pegs. If it's any consolation, she still remembers your screams fondly. Naruto said, the sun god giving him a dirty look in the mirror while muttering to himself. Oh okay what about Skoll? Who's that? Bianca asked after taking a few moments to calm down, interested in hearing more about the pantheon Naruto came from. Skoll and Hati, they're the sons of Fenrir, the grandsons of Loki. They chase after Sol and Mani, the god of the moon, which lead to the creation of night and day. And they're destined to finally catch and devour them both in the beginning of Ragnarok. Said Annabeth, with Naruto nodding in response. Right again. But that's only part of the story. Odin had known Skoll and Hati were Fenrir's children, and Fenrir was destined to devour him during Ragnarok, so Odin had both of them chained up as pups to keep Fenrir at bay. Though, when Sol and Mani grew mutinous and stood still, refusing to drive their chariots across the sky, he used his ancient magic to cast the wolves into the heavens, and they began the chase. And long shall they chase, but not endlessly, for it is foretold that someday Skoll and Hati will catch and devour their prey. And that day shall be Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods. Naruto explained, much to their amazement and confusion. Wait, he knew that the wolves devouring the sun and moon would start Ragnarok, which is when he dies. Why did he release them? Thalia asked in confusion, wondering why anyone would set into motion the events of their own potential demise. And that's the question, isn't it? Why? And the answer is rather simple, it's about control. The wolves determine when Ragnarok begins, and now he controls the wolves. Odin believes that a battle fought on his timetable is a battle he stands a better chance at winning, replied Naruto, the demigods frowning at this. What about the 9 realms? You mentioned Niflheim, but aren't there 8 more? Are they actually different planets? Naiko asked, excitedly at the idea of there being other planets, only for Naruto to shake his head. That's another misconception, the 9 realms aren't really different planets, think of them more as different dimensions, different layers of reality that are all layered on top of each other. As for what they are, there's Midgard, which is the one we all live in now, Niflheim, the realm of fog and ice, on the opposite side of that is Muspelheim, the realm of fire and home of the fire giants, ruled by Surtur the Brave. Then there's Helheim, where the souls of the deceased go when they die, and is ruled by Hel, goddess of death and daughter of Loki. Along with Alfheim, the home of the light elves and dark elves, ruled by Freyr, one of the Vanir gods, Vanaheim, the home of the Vanir tribe, Svartalfheim, the home of the dwarves, some of the best craftsmen in the 9 realms, Jotunheim, the home of the Jotnar, and Asgard, the home of the Aesir tribe, and ruled by Odin with an iron fist. Naruto explained. That's the one you're from. I mean, you were raised in Asgard, right? Annabeth asked. Yeah, that's where my father took me after, said Naruto before shaking his head, unconscious, raising his hand to his left shoulder where a specific set of runes were tattooed. You never said anything about your mother before. Bianca said hesitantly, guessing that something must have happened to her. I don't like talking about her, much. Naruto muttered, making the brunette wince. Well, what about the rest of your family? Any siblings? Asked Naiko to change the subject. I have 2 brothers and a sister, all of us having different mothers. I also have a stepmother, Sif, the goddess of wheat, earth, harvest and family, replied Naruto. I'm guessing that it wasn't easy being around her. Thalia said with a frown, given how her own stepmother would likely kill her at the first opportunity. You'd be surprised, she's surprisingly nice when she wants to be, Naruto said, having managed to get along with Sif. While she wasn't exactly motherly towards him, she did at least consider him better behaved than his brothers, which wasn't saying much, but still something. Though Naruto figured it helped that he and his sister genuinely got along, making Sif be nicer for her daughter's sake. Now, if you don't mind me asking some questions, who actually was this guy that betrayed you and the kid? Naruto asked, looking at Annabeth and Thalia. The daughter of Athena frowned along with Grover at the mention of Luke, while the Ravenet scowled. His name's Luke Castellan, a son of Hermes. And he was our friend until he betrayed us for the Titans, replied Thalia, with Annabeth nodding in agreement before sighing. Yeah, he was our friend. Thalia, Grover and I met him before we arrived at Camp Half-Blood. Thalia meeting him first, then finding me, and then we met Grover when he was sent to bring us to camp. But before that, we'd always been on the run from monsters, hunting us, mostly Thalia, due to her being the result of Zeus breaking the oath of the Big Three and Hades wanting her dead. Annabeth said, Naruto nodding at this, having heard of the oath the sons of Kronos made, while Bianca and Naiko looked confused. What's so important about some oath? And would Hades want Thalia dead? Questioned Bianca, confused as to why Zeus breaking an oath would warrant Thalia's death. It's because they all made the oath on Styx, the most important oath anyone can make, since if you break it, then dying would be the best outcome. The Big Three, Zeus, Poseidon and Hades, made the oath back during World War II, swearing to not have any more demigod children, since their kids were just too powerful. Explained Grover, making Bianca and Naiko look at Thalia before looking back at Andromeda with the hunters. I don't think it worked. Naiko stated, seeing how they were traveling with a daughter of Zeus and a daughter of Poseidon. No, it didn't. Which was honestly pretty stupid in the first place, given the fact that 2 of those gods basically have a scoreboard to see who can sleep with the most mortals. It was inevitable they'd break the oath. No offense, said Naruto, directing the latter part to Thalia, who shrugged it off, aware her father was most known for his numerous affairs. That still doesn't explain why Thalia was punished. Her father is the one who broke the oath, shouldn't he have been punished instead? Bianca asked with a frown, only to look at Naruto when he scoffed. That would imply he's capable of taking responsibility for his actions. And who do you think is in charge of enforcing the oaths made on Styx? King Hypocrite himself. If another god broke an oath, he'd be all for punishing them, but when it's his own screw-up then nothing is done. And no one even does anything because they're all terrified of the Master Bolt being turned on them, isn't that right? Said Naruto, looking at Artemis and Apollo, the twin archers frowning with the latter remaining silent. You do well to watch what you say, boy, you have no protection in our territory. Artemis warned, with a whiskered Redeed looking unfazed. What makes you think I had protection in the Norse pantheon's territory? I went through years of training under my father, training that'd kill anyone else, including being struck by his hammer several times. I'm not scared of an overgrown man-child with a glow stick, Naruto said, with Thalia smirking in amusement, finding it a rather fitting description. That's still not fair, it wasn't her choice to be his daughter, said Bianca with her frown deepening. Who said the gods were ever fair? Now back to Locke, Naruto said, wanting to get back to the previous topic. Luke, corrected Grover. Whatever, back to him. Would he join the Titans? Questioned Naruto, figuring it must have been really bad if he thought joining the Titans was the better option. I guess it started during the time we were on the run together. When it was just me and Luke, we weren't the biggest fans of the gods, given how we were constantly chased by monsters and nearly killed dozens of times. It only got worse one time, after we met Annabeth and I was hurt. Luke took us to his mother's home for help and she seemed pretty off her rocker. He also met his father for the first time after we arrived. We don't know what was said, but whatever happened between them, Luke wasn't the same afterwards. Like he had something to prove, though I don't know if it's to himself or to Hermes. Thalia explained with a frown. It only got worse when Grover found us and guided us to Camp Half-Blood. Hades had sent an entire army of monsters after us to kill Thalia, hellhounds, skeletons, cyclops, and all three kindly ones were there. Said Annabeth, shaking slightly at remembering that night. What are kindly ones? Nico asked, having never heard of any monsters called that before. The three Furies, Hades' chief torturers. Clarified Naruto with Thalia, Annabeth and Grover nodding in confirmation. Yeah, them. Thalia fought them off on her own, but eventually they overpowered her. Annabeth said, before Thalia put a hand on her shoulder as she looked at the Uzumaki and D'Angelo siblings. They ripped me apart and would have dragged me down to the underworld to meet my loving uncle for even more fun and pain. But, instead, my dad turned me into a tree, one that created a barrier around camp that kept monsters out and keeping the demigods inside, safe. Thalia revealed, much to Bianca's and Nico's shock. So back in the tent, when you said you were a tree, your father did that. For how long? Bianca exclaimed in shock and horror at what happened. I was 12 and it was for 7 years. But I don't know how old I even am, now. Replied Thalia hesitantly. Since technically she should be 19, but she also wasn't frozen in the tree and now looked 15, it made her unsure what age she even was. Sometimes still feeling like a 12-year-old, only in an older body now. Were you aware? Nico asked hesitantly, not sure what that'd be like to be turned into a tree and then suddenly being revived in an older body. Not really. I don't even know how to describe it, but I guess like falling asleep for a really long time, but knowing you were dying only to suddenly wake up. Thalia said before shaking her head, not wanting to think about her time as a tree. After that Luke only became more bitter at the gods for what happened to Thalia and stayed at camp year-round, training as much as he could, becoming the best swordsman at camp in the last 300 years. At least until Andy showed up. But when Luke was 17, he got his first quest straight from Hermes himself to retrieve a golden apple from the Garden of Hesperides. The same quest Hercules already completed, something Luke didn't want to do, doing a quest someone else already did. And the quest ended badly, with him being scarred by Ladin. I think that's when he was pushed over the edge and gave himself to the Crooked One. Annabeth explained, looking down before continuing. It was after he joined the Titans that Luke stole the Master Bolt and Helm of Darkness, planning to start a war between the gods while staying at camp. That's when Andromeda arrived, before we knew she was Poseidon's daughter, and when it was revealed she became an outcast, given it meant Poseidon also broke the oath. I admit I was one of the ones who avoided her, given the rivalry between our parents. Luke was the only one who didn't shun her, still training her and being her first real friend at camp, it led her to developing a crush on him. But then after she went on a quest to find and return the Master Bolt and Helm of Darkness, Luke tried killing Andromeda and revealing his allegiance to Kronos. Said Annabeth sighing as she thought over everything that happened last year. Then, this summer, Luke poisoned Thalia's tree, weakening the barrier around camp, and framed Chiron for the poisoning. A quest was issued to locate the Golden Fleece, with me, Andromeda, and her Cyclops half-brother, Tyson, sneaking away to find it. Only, we were then captured by Luke, who revealed he intended to use the fleece to revive Kronos, and he tried recruiting us. But when we refused, he was going to feed us to a Draken. We were able to escape though, but we ran into Luke again. with Andromeda tricking him into revealing that he poisoned Thalia's tree through an iris message, with him ordering us to be killed until Andromeda challenged him to a duel and nearly killed herself, again, if it wasn't for Chiron arriving with more centaurs to save us. Said Annabeth, with Bianca and Nico frowning at hearing all of this, the latter's excitement also fading the more he heard of what's happened. Starting to see how the actual reality was nothing like his game and it was much more dangerous than he thought. It was after they brought the fleece to camp, I was revived and learned about everything that happened. And yeah, I'm angry and hurt at Luke's betrayal, along with the fact he poisoned me. But it's hard to let it really get to me since the last time I saw him was before I was turned into a tree. Alias said, only being able to get a little angry from what she's heard Luke's done, but not feel really betrayed and hurt at his actions, aside from him poisoning her. So, that's why Andromeda's so hurt, angry, and distrusting. Luke was her first real friend at camp, and I think the first guy she liked, then for him to betray and try to kill her multiple times hurt her. Said Annabeth before sighing sadly, understanding why Andromeda chose to join the hunters. Part of her had even considered joining as well, simply to avoid the chance of ever seeing Luke again, and any chances he'd have to hurt them even more. But Annabeth knew it wouldn't solve anything, and that, logically, it'd only be her running from her problems. That's it? Seriously? Naruto asked with a raised brow, making the demigods and Satyr look at him, with Annabeth, Thalia, and Grover frowning, thinking he's dismissing Andromeda's pain. What are you talking about? Demanded Thalia with a warning look in her eyes. I'm not talking about what happened to you or the kid, it honestly sucks what happened to both of you. But this Castellan guy, honestly, sounds like a selfish asshole. He joined the Titans because his ego was hurt. Because daddy didn't give him attention. Said Naruto in disbelief at the childish reasoning. Luke was forced to go on the run as a child for years, nearly dying dozens of times. His mom would randomly scream and scare him, making him run away. He watched someone he cared about almost die and be turned into a tree, then failing a quest. Annabeth retorted with a light glare, as while she's angry at Luke's betrayal, she still felt the need to try and defend him. I watched my mother get killed right in front of me when I was 4. And trust me when I say, it wasn't a clean death, nor was it a quick and painless one. Naruto stated, causing the daughter of Athena to fall silent and look at him in shock along with the others. It was around the same time when my father took me in. The first year of my training was basically don't die, the second year was learning to hunt things a lot bigger than me, the third year was when he sent me to Niflheim, fourth year was learning to kill monsters before they killed me, fifth year I was put against the most dangerous Einarjar he could find. And they're the souls of deceased fighters that reside in Valhalla. Where only the best of the best are allowed entry, along with still training even in death to prepare for Ragnarok. For the 6th year, I moved up to fighting my brothers, who really enjoyed knocking me around until I started being able to hit back, then for 7th and 8th year I had to fight Balder and my father, sometimes at the same time, and neither of them are very good at holding back. And every day I trained until my bones cracked, if not outright broken or shattered, until every breath I took felt like fire in my lungs. And if I messed up or disobeyed him even once, I had to start from the very beginning. There was only one, and I mean one, singular time, where my dad showed me the slightest bit of leniency when I disobeyed him with my training. Only for it to be in a completely backhanded manner when I was tasked with a near impossible, if not suicidal, quest to redeem myself in a specific amount of time. After I was nearly killed by a troll and had a rock flicked into my stomach by my father, something that would have gone right through me if he hadn't held back, not that it did much, before being sent out while I was still injured and fatigued. Said Naruto, while making air quotes when referring to his father's leniency, making the group looking at him in shock and horror to hear what he went through. If he had joined the Titans after Thalia was turned into a tree, that I could understand. Anyone would be angry enough to join the Titans after losing a close friend. But he only joined years later, after failing some stupid quest when he's the one that wanted to prove himself, but got angry because someone else already did it. He joined King Cannibal because his ego was hurt and he didn't get to prove himself his way. Naruto said, with Annabeth, Thalia and Grover unable to come up with a response to that. And you want me to feel pity, sympathy, or sadness for some spoiled arrogant brat? The only thing I feel is the desire to rip his arms off and beat him to death with them before mounting his head on a pike. Said Naruto, not caring how cold or uncaring he sounded. As far as he's concerned, Luke was just a selfish brat that's throwing a tantrum because his father wouldn't give him the toy he wanted. And now is deciding that if he doesn't get what he wants, then he'll just let the Titans destroy everything. But the demigods and Satyr remaining silent at this, before Naruto looked at his hand seeing Bianca put hers over his. Looking up at the brunette to see her smiling reassuringly at him, the Uzumaki nodding in response while moving his hand to interlace with hers. Later. It wasn't long before the sun chariot arrived at Camp Half-Blood, Apollo having it land on the shore of the lake. Ah, another happy landing. Alright kiddies, we have reached our destination, all passengers please exit the vehicle. Said Apollo smiling brightly as he opened the doors, with the demigods and Satyr exiting first followed by Artemis, Apollo, and the hunters. Whoa. Is that a climbing wall? Nico asked as they got off the bus, looking around the camp in amazement. Why is there lava pouring down it? Bianca questioned warily at seeing lava pouring down the climbing wall. It adds an extra challenge. Come on, we need to get you two introduced to Chiron and Mr. D. Thaley replied, motioning them to follow her and Annabeth. So, take the girls to cabin 8 and get Andromeda settled in a bunk. Said Artemis, since she and Apollo needed to go speak with Dionysus before going to Olympus. Yes, my lady. Zoe said with a short bow. I'll show you the way. Offered Grover, with the lieutenant looking at him annoyance. We know the way. Said Zoe, not wanting to be around any campers longer than she needs to. Oh, really, it's no trouble. It's easy to get lost here if you don't, like my old daddy goat used to say. Come on. Grover said, tripping over a canoe before getting back up. Just entertain him for a while Zoe. Said Andromeda, amused at her friend's behavior, with Zoe rolling her eyes. Yes, entertain the goat, princess. After all, I'm sure some of you might have memory problems in your old age, plus the kid probably needs an escort to avoid getting lost if you aren't holding her hand. Naruto said with a smirk. Silence boy. Zoe retorted in annoyance. Is that an order, your majesty? Asked Naruto, the lieutenant growling with her hands twitching towards her knives. Ignore the kitty, it's only trying to beg for attention by thinking it's cute. Andromeda said. Kid, I'm adorable. Said Naruto. Yeah, so adorable it makes me sick. Retorted Andromeda, covering her mouth while fake heaving. Unless that's just some bad seafood you ate, that'd also explain your breath. Naruto said waving a hand in front of his face. Andromeda, please. Artemis said, rubbing her temples. Just making sure Kitty was declawed Lady Artemis. Andromeda said, rejoining the hunters as they headed for cabin 8. Yet who's the one walking away after mommy said so, kid? Naruto called out, the daughter of Poseidon merely raising her middle finger behind her at him. Ah, and it was getting good. Muttered Apollo, flinching when his twin punched him in the arm. Does he do that often? Annabeth asked as they started heading towards the big house while looking at the D'Angelo siblings. Bet on people's nerves and enjoy antagonizing them? Yes, he does. Replied Bianca, having learned Naruto always seemed to enjoy antagonizing people whenever he could. It's really funny. He actually made a teacher at Westover quit once out of frustration. Nico said snickering at the memory, with Thalia smirking at hearing this, while Annabeth shot him a dirty look upon learning that. Naruto smirked at their words, having always enjoyed getting a reaction out of people by taunting them to see what they'll do. Though part of him admits that it felt nice to have some control over others like that, given how little control he's had over his own life until recently. He liked the chance to have some control over others, no matter how little it was. It wasn't long before they arrived at the big house, which was decorated with strings of red and yellow fireballs that warmed the porch, but didn't catch anything on fire. With the group going inside, where they found Chiron and Mr. D inside playing a card game. Only for them both to look at the group, shocked when they saw Artemis and Apollo, before Mr. D narrowed his eyes at Naruto. What's an Aesir doing here? Dionysus demanded, shocking Chiron further. A Aesir said Chiron, worried and nervous at the idea of an Aesir being here. That's what must be discussed on Olympus. We must go now, Dionysus. Artemis said, the god of wine still looking at Naruto with narrowed eyes, before letting out a huff and stood up. At least I won't be blamed once it starts raining lightning. Said Dionysus, knowing their father won't be happy to learn that someone from another pantheon is here. Like it'd even tickle me. Naruto retorted, causing Dionysus to pause before sighing in annoyance. Because of course you're the Thunder Lumox's spawn. Wonderful. Dionysus said sarcastically, before he, Apollo and Artemis all vanished from sight. Chiron, these are the new campers. Bianca D'Angelo and Nico D'Angelo. Annabeth introduced, with the centaur shaking off his shock and smiled in relief. Ah, then both of you succeeded, wonderful. Said Chiron, relieved they were able to bring in 2 new campers after so many of them have begun defecting. Yeah, bringing 2 and losing 1. Thalia muttered sadly, making Chiron smile fall. Losing 1? What happened? And where's Andromeda? Chiron asked, worried at what may have happened to her. She's not dead, thankfully. But she decided to join the hunters after everything that happened with Luke. Revealed Annabeth sadly, with Thalia scowling and looking away, while Chiron looked down. Ah, I see. Chiron said, saddened that Andromeda's chosen to leave camp, but could also understand why she chose to join the hunters. Well then, welcome Bianca and Nico. If you'll follow me to the den, we can get started on the orientation film. Said Chiron, putting on a smile that didn't reach his eyes before he looked at Naruto. And I suppose that you may watch as well, Chiron said before trailing off. Naruto Uzumaki and, no, I don't need to see any film. I've already learned everything I've needed to before. I'll just explore the camp myself. Replied Naruto, intrigued to see how exactly demigods here trained. I can show you around. Annabeth offered, still having more questions to ask about what he knew. I'll come too. Said Thalia, having her own questions she wanted answers to. Okay. I'll come find you both once you're done here. Naruto said, looking at Bianca and Naiko. Okay, see you Naruto. Naiko said before following Chiron into the den. Yeah, see you. Said Bianca, hiding her annoyance at Naruto being alone with Annabeth and Thalia before following her brother and Chiron. With Naruto, Annabeth and Thalia exiting the big house to start showing him around the camp. So this part ends here. Alright, that's it for today's video guys. Let me know in the comments section how was the story, and also don't forget to like, share and subscribe. I will meet you in another video. Bye bye.